Well, we didn't get a new Mac Pro, but we did get a brand new touchscreen MacBook. Check it out. Keyboard, Magic Trackpad, and a touchscreen where you can tile apps, resize them, close or minimize them, and access app menus. It's everything we've ever wanted in a MacBook. Wait, what? What's that? It's just an iPad? It's not a touchscreen MacBook? Well, this is as close as Apple's ever going to get to one, and there are now going to be a lot of people who never buy a notebook computer again because of what an iPad can do running iPadOS 26. And that, everyone, is probably the biggest takeaway for me from WWDC 2025. It wasn't Apple Intelligence. It wasn't a massive improvement to Siri, it wasn't a new Mac Pro, and it certainly wasn't earth-shattering updates to spatial computing. But I'm not here to cover all of WWDC, just the parts that I think matter to those of us who love Final Cut Pro and making videos on our Macs. I made a video a few weeks ago going in-depth on what I thought we'd see or not see during the WWDC event. In that video, I said that it was likely that we'd see Apple go even further with spatial and immersive video during the Vision OS portion of the keynote. And while we got some information on developments in that area, we didn't get all that much. They've enhanced spatial photos by improving the conversion of older 2D photos into something called spatial scenes, and spatial scenes will also be available to developers who want to include them in the websites they build, as well as the apps that they build. Logitech has a new accessory called Muse that could be integrated with the live drawing feature currently available in Final Cut Pro for iPad. With the announcement of a new spatial video editing app or app extension, not sure exactly what it is, from Adobe that's powered by Premiere, it's likely we'll see Final Cut Pro adapted to Vision OS either as an extension of Final Cut Pro for Mac or perhaps as a standalone app, and Logitech's Muse accessory could be an interesting tool for those who want to draw their own titles in their videos. Apple also announced a partnership with GoPro, Insta360, and Canon to make viewing 360 content possible in Vision OS. Now, with Final Cut Pro, you can currently edit spatial video, but as far as I know, there isn't a workflow that allows you to create immersive video content meant for the Apple Vision Pro. But please correct me if I'm wrong on that. Now, this support of 360 footage in Vision OS feels like the first step in that direction. You'd edit the 360 video in Final Cut Pro and then view the finished video on your Apple Vision Pro. It's only a matter of time before YouTube and other platforms support immersive video, allowing filmmakers and content creators to take full advantage of the format and share their creations with other Apple Vision Pro users. Now, when I made my WWDC prediction video, I was hoping for a bigger step forward for immersive video, but that didn't end up happening. So we'll see if there are additional developments this fall. I also mentioned how we might see improvements to spatial computing features that make using Pro apps with Vision OS even better. But the only real update we saw on that front was Vision OS remembering what your app layout was even after you restart your Apple Vision Pro. Now, in my WWDC video, I also mentioned the Mac Pro, and I'm going to get to that here in a minute, so be sure to stick around because that's probably the biggest point I want to make about WWDC, because Apple, they left it out entirely. Like, look at this image of the Mac lineup. No Mac Pro at all, but more on that soon. So I also spoke about Apple Intelligence and mentioned improvements to Image Playground. We do get an update there where Apple has integrated ChatGPT as an option for image generation. Image Playground was a bit underwhelming when users got their hands on it, and Apple seems to be leaning into ChatGPT quite a bit more to satiate users' appetites for top-notch image generation. With Image Playground's integration into Final Cut Pro 11, it's likely we'll see a version 11.2 in the fall that adds support to 16:9 aspect ratios and the use of ChatGPT. This is certainly a step forward in integrating AI features into the Apple ecosystem, but I know we all were hoping for quite a bit more as we watched WWDC. At least I know I was. There weren't a lot of other Apple Intelligence features that I saw that provided clues to what we could eventually see integrated with Final Cut Pro. Developments like live translation certainly paved the way for what could be cool new features in Final Cut Pro, but I don't think we'll see too much of that anytime soon, unfortunately. In my video about WWDC, I also mentioned how the iOS portion of the keynote could mention Final Cut Camera or Final Cut Pro for iPad, and I was half right. Nothing was mentioned about Final Cut Camera, but we did see Final Cut Pro for iPad when the new feature of background tasks was added to iPadOS 26. If you want to export a video in Final Cut Pro for iPad but switch to another app to work on something while your video exports, you can now do that. I looked closely at the UI for the Final Cut Pro for iPad app they showed, but I didn't notice anything that clearly indicated a big update to the app. But iPadOS did get some serious updates that bring it even closer to macOS, and having a new cursor, application menus, and the ability to resize app windows is a big step in the right direction to making editing on an iPad an even better experience. Even the update to the Files app makes it more likely that I'd consider editing on my iPad Pro if I'm on a plane or hanging out at a coffee shop. Let's just hope the Final Cut Pro team adds the audio crossfades keyboard shortcut to Final Cut Pro for iPad, because that is the one feature that has been a deal breaker for me editing extensively on my iPad. Other awesome updates to iPadOS as it pertains to video professionals include the ability to select audio inputs on a per app basis for those of us who add professional audio or microphone accessories to our iPads. The voice isolation feature is also available across all of iPadOS, so that capturing audio with a connected microphone is that much clearer when there's background noise. You can now capture your video feed locally when participating in a podcast remotely. This really superpowers the iPad for people who prefer an iPad over a Mac and regularly participate in podcasts or other content where they need to provide a video file of their feed. Apple also claims to have improved the audio quality when recording with AirPods to studio quality, and for those of us who watch news segments or listen to podcasts where a participant is just using AirPods, it can be quite painful. We'll see if combining voice isolation with this new recording feature improves the audio quality to true studio sound. While iPadOS was probably the most exciting portion of the keynote, macOS Tahoe showed off some features that I and my editor friends have wanted for a long time. We can finally customize the color of our folders and use emoji to make them much easier to visually process. A good friend of mine has been using a third-party app to color code his folders for years, but I held out for Apple to allow you to do this natively in macOS, and it has finally become a reality. So rest assured, I will be going through my entire Finder folder template that I use when I make every YouTube video and adding custom colors and emoji to all of the folders. If you're curious to know more about my Finder folder template, there's a link at the top of the description that goes in depth into all of that. Definitely check it out. Now, Apple also dedicated a lot of time to Spotlight, giving it its biggest update ever. I won't get into details right now, but if you haven't watched the keynote and you consider yourself a Mac power user, you're going to love what Spotlight can do now. The feature I love most that they've added: clipboard history. We finally have a way to view a history of what we've copied to our clipboard natively in macOS. I've been using an app called Paperclip for years to be able to do this, and while I'll still use that app, Spotlight gives me an additional way to access all the things I've copied recently on my Mac. Now that we have that feature added, the next one for Apple to add to Finder is auto-resizing the column width so that all of the text of your files and folders is visible. Right now, I have to manually resize them, and it's one of the biggest pain points when using column view in Finder, and I am ride or die column view. I'll just have to keep dreaming for that feature update to come soon. There was also a quick mention of Metal 4 and how it boosts frame interpolation and denoising. Will we see improvements in Final Cut Pro with how it uses optical flow for slow motion and how it conforms frame rates? I'm sure we'll see performance improvements there, especially with new M chips coming in the fall. So about that missing Mac Pro. Apple last updated the Mac Pro at WWDC in 2023. That's right, the entire Mac lineup has been updated since then, including a brand new redesigned Mac Mini and the addition of a 15-inch MacBook Air. But the Mac Pro has only had one integration with Apple Silicon. One. In my video about what to expect for WWDC, I was certain we'd see the release of a new Mac Pro that featured the M3 Ultra chip and possibly a new variant of M, like an M4 Ultra or an M4 Extreme. Again, Apple did not show the Mac Pro in any of the images they made, showcasing the entire Mac lineup. So what does that mean for the future of the Mac Pro? With its initial release in 2019 and the update to Apple Silicon making the Mac Pro form factor overkill, just look at how much empty space there is inside the M2 Ultra Mac Pro versus the old Intel version. I think the absence of the Mac Pro at WWDC paves the way for Apple to release a brand new version of it that's smaller, but still allows for the kind of expansion and cooling pros want in a Mac Pro. Will it just be a smaller version of the current Mac Pro, or will it look like a bigger version of the Mac Studio? It's hard to say. The biggest issue with the complete redesign is Apple having to then redesign the Pro Display XDR. That display was designed to match the Mac Pro back in 2018, but will we see a new design of the Pro Display XDR that aligns more with the Studio Display and the Mac Studio? I think we will. And Apple, moving forward, will make sure that WWDC is only about software and the fall events are only about hardware. So, if you're a big fan of the Mac Pro, I think your time will come in mid to late October when Apple updates the MacBook Pro lineup. And now, just some quick takeaways from WWDC 2025. The beginning of the spatial web. Can Apple save the internet with this? Because between social media and the current vibe of the internet, it could use some saving. The internet kind of sucks. It's not very fun anymore, but that's a whole other video. Tim Cook did not have F1 energy in that opening. I can only imagine the director struggling to get him to get as excited as Craig to try to match the energy of the entire segment. Still, it was a fun way to intro WWDC, and I can't wait to see F1 in theaters. Continued emphasis on privacy and encryption. Apple's really doubling down on this to let everyone know that they want what you do on their devices to remain private. Does anyone get early OS X vibes from this iOS redesign? You might remember Aqua. Apple is officially down with wide leg and big old baggy jeans. Straight fit, skinny jeans, those are gone. Say goodbye to them. You still can't set the color temperature in the camera app, by the way. Craig is world champ at naturally shifting his weight from one leg to the other every few seconds. Great job, Craig. Music Pins is very cool. I'm definitely going to use that. That first demo of visual intelligence where he searches for the jacket in the picture was hugely disappointing. It's just a fancy way to do an image search and find stuff that's similar. I was hoping it would find the exact jacket he saw in the photo. Instead, he has a bunch more work to do searching through image search results. That's not very intelligent to me. Visual intelligence with pulling date and time info and adding it to the calendar app, that worked great though. Definitely going to use that feature. Does using visual intelligence save the screenshot, or does it see that you're using visual intelligence and it doesn't save it? I don't want a crap ton of screenshots clogging up my Photos app if I use this visual intelligence feature a lot. Did Workout Buddy feel a little weird to anyone? I get it. It's a cool idea, but every time it would encourage me, I'd be all like, thanks, robot. Like, it would mean less knowing it's just a computer talking to me, wouldn't it? There's a new feature in the camera app where it tells you your lens might be dirty. I know a lot of people who could use that. All right, those widgets integrating into the space in Vision OS was awesome, especially the one that looked like a window looking out into a landscape. That was pretty cool. And lastly, are we going to see a new Final Cut Pro logo in macOS, the same logo that we've been seeing in iPadOS for the last few years? All right, let me know in the comments what you saw at WWDC that got you excited about Final Cut Pro or just video editing and content creation in general. Was this event a big letdown for you? Was it just meh? Or did the big redesign and improvements to Apple software get you pumped for their release this fall? I'm pretty much in a perpetual state of disappointment as it relates to Final Cut Pro anyway, so I'll spare you all of my whining. That's it though. I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here and get back to chopping some broccoli. I'll see you soon.